This is footage of an RPG that I've been making. While it looks like a normal RPG, this whole scene is actually 3D. But why make it 3D? Wouldn't it be easier to make it 2D? Yes, but I wouldn't have this or this. Making the game in 3D makes it really easy to add realistic lighting and to add other features in the future, like crawling. So why did this one room take me 6 months to make? Well, that's a little something called I'm Shade Makes Games, and I make, well, games. The sunset looks pretty cool, right? But honestly, the nighttime looks better. See that? That's a real night sky in Idaho. I used this application called Stellarium and took a screenshot and used it for my night sky. But what exactly is all of this? What does this have to do with the game that I showed you? Well, for that, we will have to go to the beginning. I remember watching Markiplier back in 2016 when he first played The Witch's House, or when he played Ib or Madfather. These games are great and were part of the horror RPG craze at the time. I wanted to make a horror RPG but with modern elements and realistic lighting. So I decided to make a horror RPG roguelike. The idea was simple. Get these two games and smush them together. How hard can that be? It turns out it's really hard. I spent a good chunk building this in 2D. I made an item system, a gun, and I could already tell that this wasn't what I was going for. The lighting wasn't realistic enough for my taste. Look at the shadow of the table. If the chandelier is above the table, shouldn't the shadow be directly under the table? Instead, the shadow is south of the table, which I did not like. So I rebuilt the whole thing in 3D. It was a pain to get it set up. Like for some reason, the pixels get stretched when the camera is moving, or they seem to flicker in and out. I decided to ignore these issues and work on the dungeon generation. This proved to be a huge mistake. I made 2 rooms to test the procedural generation out. I also had to make furniture in 3D, otherwise it would look a bit flat. Once I had it working, I realized a couple things. If I kept this generation, the game would basically boil down to this. Go to a new room, loot items, defeat monsters, go to another room, and repeat. I would essentially strip the game of its RPG elements and become just another roguelike. I sat on this question for a long time. How do I combine an RPG and a roguelike? There is a pretty big reason why you don't see RPG roguelikes. They don't fit together. RPGs depend on story, characters, and well-paced areas. Roguelikes depend on randomness, strategy, and replayability. So how do I fix this problem? So like any good game developer, I stopped working on the game. During this time, I made a couple games for game jams. None of them were good. And then I had another idea for a game. I wanted to make a game inspired by Voices of the Void. I thought about making a multiplayer survival game about operating a remote weather station. So I started working on it and I got this. So why did I stop working on it and go back to my original idea? Yeah, it was Deltarune. Although this game has been out for a few years, I just picked it up a couple weeks ago, and I really wish I had played it earlier. Playing an actual RPG made me realize a major issue about my own game. My game didn't really have a direction. I had written a story, I had characters, I had a setting, but the player was basically just wandering around a mansion. There wasn't really anything guiding them through it. And that's when I realized something important. RPGs are usually very carefully structured. You go somewhere, you meet someone, something happens, you go somewhere else, story progresses. My game did not have that. So I decided to change the way the game was structured. Instead of making the entire mansion procedurally generated, I'm going to carefully design the important rooms and hallways, the story beats, the encounters, the places where the player is supposed to go. But the less important areas can still be procedurally generated. That way every run can be a little different. Basically, I get the structure of an RPG with some replayability of a roguelike. And finally, I had an actual direction for the game. And once I finally figured that out, development started moving a lot faster. This past month has probably been more productive than the previous 5 months combined. I added more traditional RPG elements, including a proper dialogue system. I removed a lot of the action-focused mechanics, like traditional weapons. I redid the lighting, I fixed a bunch of the visual bugs, and I finally finished this room. Which brings us back to where we started. If I knew what I was actually making, I would have had this room done in a month. But honestly, I don't regret it, because that's game development. You make something and it doesn't work. You make another thing and it doesn't work. Then you get distracted and make a completely different game. And eventually you find out what you really wanted to make all along. This is my first devlog, so if you want to follow along the development of this game, consider subscribing. And if you have any ideas for my game, or just some general questions, please let me know in the comments below. That's all. Bye.